Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, thank you for joining 2A tonight. I am Mark Halperin, grateful to have you here as the president heads off to the Middle East. And a lot of reverberation from the events of the weekend, the things we discussed in the morning meeting. There's about 8 mega deals out there, ranging from the existentially vital Ukraine, Russia, to the both sublime and ridiculous, the question of whether the president's going to accept a free plane from a country that is not in favor with much of MAGA. So we'll talk about it all. Our guests will join us in a moment. Matt Gorman, Republican strategist, Ian Smith, a Democrat, both of them have been here before, and both of whom are fan favorites of the two-way community. So we're delighted to have them back. I'm going to run through the news with them. And then, as always, if you're here on the two-way platform, we'd be delighted to take your questions. Never put smack in the chat. Always raise your hand if you'd like to be in on the conversation. Raise your electronic hand, and we will get to you before too long. Spoiler alert, none of these things have been resolved. They're all still very much up in the air. And there's, as always, unfortunately, or not as always, but as often the case, there's a lot of dispute about the facts. And that allows the partisans on both sides to be pretty aggressive and claiming victory in the absence of information. So we'll run through that as much as we can. And again, then take your questions. A reminder that the People's Poll is available to you now. We talked about it on the morning meeting, and it's on my Substack. It's also on my X feed. If you want to read a poll and see if we asked your question as part of the survey, please go to that now, and we'll remind everybody about that as we go through the program where applicable. So here's Matt Gorman, Republican strategist, in an unfamiliar location under an exit sign. Matt, are you out smoking a cigarette? Where are you?
No, I'm at my office right now, actually.
Your
Start time.
Your office has that big exit sign.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I know.
All right. And now, do you know Mr. Ian Smith?
I don't think we've met.
All right, Mr. Smith, welcome. This is Mr. Gorman. Mr. Gorman, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, Matt Gorman, veteran Republican strategist, has done time at a variety of campaigns and prominent committees. I'd say, what are you probably most known for, Matt? Is Rubio?
Probably maybe Jeb. I did Tim Scott most recently, so
Yeah.
probably something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. He likes Southern Republican politicians who think they're charismatic. That's what he likes. It's those guys. And some of them are. I don't want to differentiate. Mr. Smith, welcome back. We're delighted to have you. Tell Matt and everybody else what you're most known for and what you'd like everyone to know about you.
Most known for, I don't know, a couple things. I cook well. My family loves me. My name is Ian Smith. I'm director of polling and analytics for Navigator Research. I've been in Democratic polling and strategy since 2016.
Matt Gorman is a massive consumer of polling data. And just so you know, he's one of those polling clients who, when he looks at a question, he looks at it and says, I wouldn't have asked it that way. That's your favorite your favorite kind of clients who say, interesting data, but I wouldn't have asked the question that way. And then the pollster thought bubble is, we sent you the questionnaire. We sent you the instrument, right? That's what you guys call a polling questionnaire, right? You call it the instrument. Is that right, Mr. Smith?
Interchangeable.
So let's say we sent Matt and the client, we sent the instrument a week ago. They never got back to us. So we went with our questions. And now the data comes back. And instead of being interested in the data, they want to just say that's not the way they would have asked it. Folks, that happens 100 times a day in our world. And it's very frustrating for people like Mr. Smith and oddly empowering for clients like Mr. Gorman who consume the polling data as they wish. All right. Again,
I don't think you're a real pollster if you don't say that yourself when you get the data back either.
Exactly.
Like I would have tweaked that question.
Wouldn't it ask it that way? Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it's crazy when you get the thing back and you look at the question and the data is meaningless because it's like, of course, all the Republicans answered that way. And of course, all the Democrats answered that way. And you think, well, that was a stupid way to write the question because we ended up with nothing.
Yeah.
That does happen a fair amount, unfortunately, in the polling business. All right, guys, I'm just going to run through the news with you and you jump in. Don't wait to be called on. Just weigh in as you wish. So the president today, New York Times headline, announced this thing of we're not going to accept higher drug prices for Americans. We're going to have the same prices as everybody around the world. I bet you, I don't know, Ian, if you've polled this lately, but obviously a president saying they're going to stand up to the drug companies and lower prices, that's going to be popular. But people are starting to say what the president announced does not really suggest it's going to cause change because the drug companies will challenge us. But as we said this morning, he's likely to ask Congress to basically pass a law that does the same thing as the executive order does. So, Ian, how is it in public opinion that the pharmaceutical companies are so unpopular for decades, and yet that doesn't, the politicians don't seem to be able to beat them, except maybe now?
Yeah, one, we don't know that pharmaceutical companies, there's no love lost between them and Americans, voters more broadly.
Yeah.
And that prescription drug prices specifically is a sticking point that folks have been wanting administrations for decades now to address. So I would say what folks are looking for is tangibility. If he's actually able to kind of get this ball across the line and significantly reduce prescription drug costs across the board, then he will receive a bump for that. It's just going to be popular, full stop.
Should Democratic politicians just embrace this and say, great idea, Mr. President?
I'm not a policy guy, so obviously they'll have to kind of run through the language here. But if the president is putting something across the line that will lower drug costs, then yes.
Yeah. So Matt Gorman, Big Pharma has given money to Democrats, given money to Republicans, run ads in support of Democrats, run ads in support of Republicans, run ads against Democrats. I mean, they try to kill anyone who crosses them and help anyone who's their friend. So is the politics of this as simple as it seems, which is the president doesn't need any money from them. He's not afraid of them, so he can do this?
Yeah, look, I was involved in kind of the last probably highest time Pharma's had, and that was right before Trump took office, I would say in 2016. And if you remember the Mylan, the generic, I can't remember what drug it was for, and they just upcharged it an extraordinary amount. And after that, they got a ton of heat for it, and it became something that was everywhere. It wasn't just in policy or politics. So over the last, I would say, 5 years, Pharma has really done a very good job at trying to rebrand itself. And I'm not taking a position of whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's tech, it's innovation.
Right.
Hey, PBMs, look over here. Right. And so they knew very well that with Trump coming into office, and I was talking to somebody involved in the industry just within the last 24 hours. And they said, look, every day I've been going to work for the last 6 months, I knew that it could be the worst day of my professional career.
Right.
So I think they feel pretty good just with this executive order, if this kind of leaves it alone. Congress, it's going to be a bigger fight, a lot thornier. And I will also say, I think then you have more people they draw to the fight. PBMs, insurance companies, they're going to pull everybody in and try and get everybody bloody.
Right. And they're masters like big tech is at saying, well, okay, we can it's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass a bill. We just need to find one weak link. So let me ask you both a question, then we'll listen to the president a little bit talking about this issue. Ian, do you work for Big Pharma?
I do not.
All right. Let's say you did, and they said, we want to do a poll to figure out where our strengths are, where we can mitigate our vulnerabilities. What are some things you'd ask about to try to figure out messaging for Big Pharma here?
Yeah, that's a beast. One, I would see how much credit we get, if I'm the proverbial we as in Big Pharma, for kind of advancements over time in drug technology, et cetera, and really lean in on that argument, right? This, our pricing structure is about XYZ, whether that's research, whether that's pushing kind of pharmaceutical technology forward. It's just going to be a tough argument when you compare it to the cost of other countries, as Democrats and now Donald Trump is starting to do, right? This is more about a fairness across countries argument. So they're in a tough position. Yeah.
So Matt, I'm no genius about corporate advice, but my first advice to them, if they hired me to do like what you do, like messaging and strategy, I'd say rebrand yourself, stop being Pharma and be the American Miracle Association.
Yes.
How's that? Right?
Yeah. And there's actually there's a smaller, most people don't know this, there's a smaller trade association that is, Pharma's really, like, I would say, I'm making this up, 10 members that have a ton of
market share. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a smaller one called the Biotech Innovation Organization, which has hundreds of members, and they do smaller. And it's the white hat to the black hat of Pharma. I would say you're exactly right. You want to over-index on the bio side, the white hat, and less on the black hat. And I think we also want to do is more enemies. You already have PBMs drawing in. I know another area they're looking at very, very closely is like, I don't know the best way to put it, but like the hymns and all these kind of pharmacies you see advertised on podcasts or on digital ads, and they're going to draw them into the fight. And they're saying, all you're doing is copying our drugs. We're the ones innovating. And to Ian's point, right? They're going to go out, they're going to hear a lot of the words cures, innovations, all this other stuff, and drawing everybody else into the fight. And they're going to make it as bloody as possible.
I read all the statements that come from the organization and from the individual companies to try to get a sense of how they're talking about it. And they're doing what you're saying. They say, we're a great American crown jewel. We do all the research. Families will, your relatives will die if you kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Don't follow the foreign countries because their economies are horrible. Don't restrict pricing the way they do. And all of it is there's some truth to all of it, but it also is, it feels to me like the NRA. The NRA used to be all powerful in Washington, and now they're not. They're not nothing, but they don't always get their way. Pharma used to get its way, and Democratic presidents let them get their way pretty much because they said, we have so many fights to take on. Let's not take this one on because fighting them is hard. Matt, what is the source of their reduction in power, or is it just over time they wore out their welcome because of high prices, or is there a pivot here?
I think it's two things. I think you're exactly right. There were areas like myelin and other ways where it was almost just indefensible. The champions in Congress couldn't stand there with an open, with a straight face and defend a lot of this stuff. And I think you're exactly right, where power is so decentralized now. Those big industry groups, especially with Trump co-opting kind of a lot of more populist language, doesn't work the same way anymore. And I think they took a major hit with the Medicare price negotiations. That was one of their first big losses in forever, and they weren't used to it. And I think it put them on war footing, and got them ready for the fights to come. And you're seeing some of them right now.
Yeah. All right,
I think
one more.
also,
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go.
They're also dealing with kind of broader shifts. One, Martin Shkreli, I think, did some kind of permanent damage to the brand and really put the spotlight on them. But there's also kind of broader sentiment change when it comes to kind of these monopolistic companies, right? Whether it's your Googles, your Apples, your Facebooks, this bipartisan kind of feeling that we're getting pushed around, feeling that these companies are too big for their britches. So when you're running into that and you're also providing services that literally people need, life or death, I think it's an impossibility to get around. It's going to be really tough.
It's a great point. It's two really important parts of the explanation. Thank you for that. I just the Dow up 1,100 today. S&P up 3.3%. So I believe that means the markets now are above where they were before Liberation Day. So it's all back. I don't know if that means all our 401ks are back because I stopped looking. But Ian, I want to ask you one more question before we listen to the president talk about the pharma issue. This is the least. This is a low point for discussions of bipartisan legislation. I think that I remember for a first term or second term president. Of course, this is both a first term and a second term president. Like, there's no discussion of a legislative agenda of something both sides might vote for significant legislation, even though members talk about it. And on the issue of price control for drugs, there is bipartisan legislation. Would you say that if this does move, if there's a big bill that the president supports, that John Thune supports, that the speaker supports, is it safe for Democrats to vote for that, or is the anger in the party at Trump such now that even if you're worried about a primary, if you're in a blue district or blue state, if you're worried about a primary, supporting a bill that Donald Trump supports that's high profile is political danger or suicide?
No, I honestly think the opposite would be true. Again, if the policy kind of meets the moment, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to give myself that caveat. If Democrats believe the policy meets the moment and this will lower drug costs, they will actually be punished in primaries and moving forward if the policy passes anyway and it lowers drug costs. Okay, folks are looking for tangible results. So
got it. Okay.
There are no knocks for bipartisanship here.
That's what you said is the norm, but there's so little discussion of it. Like you say, what's on Trump's agenda in 2025 that could be a bipartisan accomplishment, legislative agenda? I literally can't, except for this now, I can't name anything. I mean, they talk about immigration, but I don't think there's any way Democrats would vote for a Trump immigration bill at this point. All right, let's listen to a bit of the president. Sam, if you could play 2 and 3 back to back, please.
I'm doing this for the American people. I'm doing this against the most powerful lobby in the world, probably the drug lobby, drug and pharmaceutical lobby. But it's one of the most important orders, I think, that's ever been signed, certainly with regard to health care or health in the history of our country, and it's an honor to be a part of it. And so today, Americans spend 70% more for prescription drugs than we spent in the year 2000. Think of that. Our country has the highest drug prices anywhere in the world by sometimes a factor of 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's not like they're slightly higher. They're 6, 7, 8 times. There are even cases of 10 times higher. So that you go 10 times more expensive for the same drug, that's big numbers. Even though the United States is home to only 4% of the world's population, pharmaceutical companies make more than 2/3 of their profits in America. So think of that. With 4% of the population, the pharmaceutical companies make most of their money, most of their profits from America. That's not a good thing. Now, I think, by the way, pharmaceutical, I have great respect for these companies and for the people that run them. I really do. And I think they did one of the greatest jobs in history for their company, convincing people for many years that this was a fair system. Nobody really understood why, but I figured it out. For years, pharmaceutical and drug companies have said that research and development costs were what they are, and for no reason whatsoever. They had to be borne by America alone. Not anymore, they don't.
What a just a hugely populist stance, right? Saying this is the most powerful lobby in the country, and I'm going to stand up to them. Matt, if you were an advisor to the president, would you say there's any risk to doing this?
I don't see right now. I really don't. I think what he did and the way he did it, it made him look populist. And obviously, when you're getting praise even from the left, it certainly is a political winner for him. And I think between this and China, it was the first, I would say, really good day policy-wise
Yeah.
for the president in a while.
Yeah. Do you see any risk, Mr. Smith?
I don't. I honestly think it's a good tactic. I mean, if we were able to kind of get like an AI to read that, right? Like, before today, you wouldn't know if it was Bernie or Hawley or Trump, right? Like, I think bringing kind of the savings down to normal folks is always safe.
We talk about issues 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. Who would be against this? What's the profile, Ian, of a voter who would not like this idea? Is there anybody?
Again, all execution. But if, as it stands on its face, no.
Like 90-10, just like maybe some pure free market folks who think this industry is entitled to.
Sure, who think any government action
whatever.
there would be But no, I mean, if you're just unilaterally able to get the United States consumers' drug costs down to what it is in other countries, I think.
All right, thank you. Let's talk about China. Number 5, please. I told you what the markets did today, and most of the reaction's been very positive to the deal struck in Geneva. U.S.-China agreed to lower most tariffs for 90 days amid trade talks. I'd say that the main criticism is people say either Trump folded or we don't know enough about the deal to know it's a good deal. But here's the president talking about China trade number 6 today before he left for Saudi Arabia.
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs.
All right. So it's just so interesting. I heard from so many people in finance today who I thought would be elated, and instead they're still complaining that this was getting the can shoot straight. Trump caved. This has been so negative, no upside. There's going to be no bringing American manufacturing back to the United States. Ian, is this popular? Standing up to China, but then backing down? Is that popular?
No, the inconsistency largely is what Americans are reacting to, and are worried about. I think, or I know in the survey just after the pullback from the original kind of Liberation Day set of tariffs, the stock market went up. Folks were less worried about their 401ks, but still worried about predicting their future financial stability. We actually had the highest folks who said, I am worried about my future personal finances in that survey just after the pullback and the stock market continuing to go up. So there is some sort of dissatisfaction with the kind of rubber banding here in policy, one, objective and implementation. Folks who support tariffs supported it for bringing back manufacturing. So pulling back here, again, tangibility is the name of the game. Messaging alone does not work here. If they're not seeing manufacturing come back, but then seeing a pullback in tariffs, there's going to be a bit of pushback there.
Right. Matt, same. I'd love you to just pick up on what Ian said and whether you see this as a political plus for the president, neutral, negative.
I mean, it need to happen, right? I mean, I think if you're the president's team, if you want to instill stability, and the first thing you need to do is step back, right? And I think being able to calm the markets and the market, you're going to hopefully kind of see, obviously saw improvement today, maybe consistent improvement. I think this is the first step in trying to provide some of that certainty, where if tariffs are not going to go any higher than they are today, and they're only going to go down, maybe this is that first step, I think.
Right. Okay. So in journalism, my general philosophy is you want to tell people stories that are important and interesting. And it's best if you're telling them stories that are both, right? If they're just interesting, just important. I tend to not be as interested in some stories as my colleagues, but I know what they're interested in because I've been around them a long time. This thing about Qatar giving the president a plane got more coverage, and the press uses this weasel word, they overshadowed. So say we're on the brink of potential Ukraine-Russia talks. India and Pakistan have settled down. There's a trade agreement with China ending these tariffs are ruining the economy. Reconciliation affecting the taxes and spending of everyone in America. I'm missing one or two others. And they say, but all of that was overshadowed by the plane. Well, it's really not overshadowed by the plane. I bet you if you walked around America, and there's the plane in question, beautiful luxury, it's called like the palace in the sky. I bet if you went to a diner in Green Bay, people probably aren't talking about the plane. Now, they may not be talking about reconciliation either, but my colleagues are so interested in the story. And I always have to make choices on my shows and in my writing. What do I cover? Okay? So much to cover, particularly with Trump. People say, I'm not talking enough about habeas corpus due process here. And my view is I can't run a show based on what Stephen Miller blurts out on Fox. Like, if they start violating people's rights, absolutely. They say, well, you should cover Trump's crypto scam. Well, probably more than we have, but I didn't see a lot of coverage when Joe Biden was running a business out of the White House for his family. And Trump making money off of the presidency. Maybe this is a new low or new high, depending on how you look at it, but it's not a new story. It's not interesting to me. And I don't know that it's important because I think most Americans think every politician gets rich in office. Maybe I'm wrong. And that one I should cover more than I do. This plane, however, I couldn't be less interested in it because Trump wants a free plane. Like, I don't know. I just don't find it that either interesting or important. But here, you saw a picture of the plane there. Here's the president, number 7, leaving for Saudi Arabia today. Now, I don't know, is this him leaving on Air Force One or is this him leaving on Marine One? Let's see. All right. It's awfully loud. A lot of loud. Okay. So, as almost all of you know, any plane the president flies on is Air Force One. He could fly on a Delta flight to be Air Force One. That plane that you think of as Air Force One, the big one, I don't want to denigrate Boeing or America. It's not that great a plane. It's really not. In terms of advanced evasion abilities, missile technology, communications, comfort for the media, it's not that great a plane. So America should have a bigger plane, and there's been a procurement issue, and then the plane's not going to be available till like 4 more years, and the president doesn't want to fly in a crappy plane during his presidency. So somehow, and I'm amazed at how little we know about this, Qatar said, we'll give you a plane. And then it was reported that the plane was going to transfer from the presidency to the president's library after his presidency. So he'd keep the plane. So it was a gift to him. It seemed like the biggest bribe in the history of the country, just like wide open. Like, he shouldn't be taking a gift from a foreign country like that. I don't care what the lawyers say. Lawyers can say anything. It seemed like a bad idea. So the president got asked about it today, and he basically said, I'd be a moron not to take a free plane for America, but he said he's not going to keep it afterwards. Here's the president talking about this, number 8.
What do you say to people who view that luxury jet as a personal gift to you? Why not leave it behind?
You're ABC fake news, right?
Why not?
Only ABC, well, a few of you would. Let me tell you, you should be embarrassed asking that question. They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much. You know, there was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you ever hear him? He won 82 tournaments. He was a great golfer. And he had a motto: when they give you a putt, you say, thank you very much. You pick up your ball and you walk to the next hole. A lot of people are stupid. They say, no, I insist on putting it. And then they putt it and they miss it. And their partner gets angry at them. You know what? Remember that, Sam Snead. When they give you a putt, you pick it up and you walk to the next hole and you say, thank you very much.
Respectfully, sir, as a businessman, some people may look at this and say, have you ever been given a gift worth millions of dollars and then not received anything?
It's not a gift to me, it's a gift to the Department of Defense. And you should know better, because you've been embarrassed enough, and so has your network. Your network is a disaster. ABC is a disaster.
All right, we're going to listen to a little bit more, but I'll just say the metaphor is pretty good, except, again, I want to know, how did this come about? You know, and what do we think the motives are for the gift? Because it's a pretty expensive gift for a country that has a lot of concerns about how the United States thinks of it. And Laura Loomer is not the only member of MAGA who does not like Qatar. And there are a lot of people in Israel who don't. It's incredible. It's one of the most incredible stories on the planet, even before this plane thing. They're an ally of the United States in the sense that we have a base there. They're an ally of the United States in that they help us with various things, including on the peace process in the Middle East. But they do a bunch of stuff that's antithetical to the interests of the United States. And here they are as a country with that mixed record. And they're watching me right now, and they're Washington lobbying firms are monitoring this and recording it, and they're going to write a report to Qatar about how Halperin's hostile to Qatar, because they have all the money in the world to try to improve their position. And this is the way the Saudis were pre 9/11. Same thing. Saudis were incredibly popular pre 9/11 in Congress, mixed in the country, and then after 9/11 they became very unpopular. And Qatar sees that example. They don't want to be unpopular with Congress or the country, and so they'll do anything to stay in the good graces of the United States. And this one, I think, will backfire. Here's the president talking more. This is quite a long soundbite. Number 9, please, talking about why Boeing's failure to deliver an Air Force One main plane necessitates taking a bribe from Qatar.
I think what happens with the plane is that, we're very disappointed that it's taking Boeing so long to build a new Air Force One. We have an Air Force One that's 40 years old. And if you take a look at that compared to the new plane of the equivalent, stature at the time, it's not even the same ballgame. You look at some of the Arab countries and the planes they have parked alongside of the United States of America plane, it's like from a different planet. And it's close to 40 years old, might be more than 40 years old now. And we, when I first came in, I signed an order to get it built. I took it over from the Obama administration. They had originally agreed. I got the price down much lower. And then when the election didn't exactly work out the way that it should have. A lot of work was not done on the plane because a lot of people didn't know. They made change orders that were so stupid, so ridiculous. And it ended up being a total mess, a real mess. And when I came back, I said, by the way, what's going on with the Boeings that are coming in? Well, sir, they're way behind. And they are. They're way behind. They were way behind. Another mess that I inherited from Biden. And it's going to be a while before we get them. And I think Qatar, who has really, we've helped them a lot over the years in terms of security and safety. I think they, and very, very nicely, and I have a lot of respect for the leadership and for the leader, Qatar. And I think they knew about it because they buy Boeings. They buy a lot of Boeings. And they knew about it. And they said, we would like to do something. And if we can get a 747 as a contribution to our Defense Department to use during a couple of years while they're building the other ones, I think that was a very nice gesture. Now, I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one, too. And it helps us out because, again, we're talking about we have 40-year-old aircraft. The money we spend, the maintenance we spend on those planes to keep them tippy-top is astronomical. You wouldn't even believe it. So I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I appreciate it very much. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But I thought it was a great gesture. And I think it was a gesture because of the fact that we have helped and continue to, we will continue to, all of those countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and others. We keep them safe. If it wasn't for us, they probably wouldn't exist right now. And I think this was just a gesture of good faith. And I don't get it. Someday it'll be like Ronald Reagan. They decommission them. You know, they get to a certain age, they decommission them. It'll go to my library. They're talking about going to my library in years out. But I thought it was a great gesture. And it's something that was done by Ronald Reagan. They actually decommissioned the plane and he put it in his library. And it actually has made the library, I think, a Boeing 707. It's actually made the library more successful. So it was good.
All right. So he says stuff that's definitely true. As I said, the fleet is old. Boeing's having trouble delivering it. First of all, you guys are, I don't know if I'm misreading your poker face. Do either of you work for Qatar? All right.
Qatar or Boeing.
All right. I'm relieved because you both started to look like, I don't know. I got a little tightness of breath here. He didn't really explain why they did it. He said they did it because they're grateful to us. But And again, if he's not taking it afterwards, although now it seems what he's saying, and maybe ABC messed up the reporting for this reason. So it's going to eventually go to his library when it's decommissioned, when it can no longer be used by any president. Sure, bring it to his library. He's the one who got it. But Ian, take off your polling hat, just put on your American hat. Doesn't make any sense to me. He says they buy planes from Boeing, which they do. Why are they able to make the plane faster than Boeing?
Yeah, I'm confused about the story, honestly. I mean, it's up to him and his Defense Department whether or not they want to take a Qatari plane. To your point earlier, is the average American going to care about this? No. But it just strikes me as weird. Boeing is an American company. We're talking all about American factoring, and then we're crapping on Boeing while buying a Boeing plane from Qatar, or getting a handout from Qatar. We talk about Trump and his administration love to talk about handouts as well, but
I couldn't agree more with your framing. Matt, why can't Boeing make the plane for us?
That I have no idea. I mean, this is one of those where there's so many different strings you can pull, and there's different stories down. This reminds me two things actually. This reminds me. Remember Dubai Ports World?
Yes.
Everybody thinks Katrina was the first scandal of the second Bush administration. No. What crushed Bush for like a good month was they were going to outsource a bunch of ports in the United States to the UAE and Dubai. And that was the thing, aside from the Social Security thing, that was a debacle too. But that was one where all of a sudden Democrats in Congress got their groove back and they were attacking Bush. That was before Katrina, I think in the spring, maybe around this time in 2005. That's number one. Number two, it's a little bit like, if you watch The Sopranos or whatever, Qatar, if I was advising Qatar, I'd be, guys, you're a little too showy right now. You just had the World Cup a couple of years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
people talk about this. The Correspondence Weekend in DC, that big week and all the parties, was a couple weeks ago. They had a big bash and a lot of reporters and operatives of both sides. They rented out this massive place, the Four Seasons, and they got no scrutiny over it. Okay, whatever. A lot of people do that. But then the plane, you're too much, you're too showy right now, and it's drawing attention. Just like how if folks in the mob, they start drawing attention to themselves, they get kind of slapped down a little bit. If I was advising Qatar, and I am not in any way, shape, or form, I'd be, guys, take it back a notch. You are drawing yourself you don't want.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And again, they it's pretty well documented. They conduct themselves on the international stage with two faces. They say they're our ally, and then they support policies that are antithetical to our interests. And the Israelis don't trust them, and MAGA doesn't trust them. So I predicted this morning that this would not happen, and it's already to some extent not happening because the president now says he's not keeping the plane, although it's possible that was misreported by ABC. All right, one more thing, end on some good news, and then we're going to go to your questions. Again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. The last known living American-Israeli hostage, Idan Alexander, was freed today, 10A. A picture of him with his family. Lots of jubilation, of course, around all of this, and great video and other things from the region. And Ambassador Witkoff was there. I don't know, is he Ambassador Witkoff? I guess maybe he's not. Envoy Witkoff.
Yeah, he's ambassador.
He's ambassador. All right. And just a lot of great happiness. And now the clock's ticking with the president headed to the region, and Netanyahu saying that the Palestinians don't have much more time to release the rest of the hostages. This feels like it could be the beginning of a release. At least we hope so. All right, let's go to your questions. Again, as always, peace, love, and understanding should be on the top of your mind as you ask your question. Unmute, tell us where you are, Eric, and what's on your mind, and thank you for joining. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Beautiful place.
Homes across from Seattle and Hamilton, Washington, and 80 acres in Hood River, Oregon.
Amazing. How do you get back and forth?
I drive.
Do you really?
Because I have a Sprinter and I have to bring my wife's furniture around to Chattanooga to finally, we've been here 6 years, but to finally decorate the home.
There might be a plane somebody's looking to get rid of. You can
exactly. How about that beautiful lamp behind you? Can you tell us about that before you ask your question?
It's made in China.
Really? Okay, it's beautiful. Love the colors. Go ahead.
But they're all phony Tiffany's. But anyway, the Boeing thing is not a big story. Coming from the Seattle area, my brother-in-law just died. He was their chief engineer. I can tell you lots of stories about Boeing. It is a hurt and broken company, and the employees are not happy. And there's a lot of stories there. But what I wanted to remark was you missed the big story today. And I'm sorry, I watched you from day one. I never do live. Bobby Kennedy's portion of the interview or the broadcast with Trump today was remarkable. He was given an extended period of time to talk. He doesn't usually talk a lot because he's not a great speaker. And he was revolutionarily complimentary to Trump for what he has done with the drug companies. And he almost hugged them. Trump reached over and Bobby reached over. And to me, that is one of the big events because most people didn't think Bobby would last 6 weeks or 2 months in this administration. And so I'm a little bit disappointed in your not highlighting that. And I think the whole press has purposefully tried to bury that. Just an aside, I'm 74 years old. I left Wall Street at 47. I've since then invested my own portfolios, and up to being 47, I had some of the best people helping me invest in healthcare and drug companies. And Pfizer and Gilead milked the COVID crisis like crazy. They've paid for it since. The drug companies really are not people helpers. And I admire Bobby Kennedy and I admire Trump so much for being able to subsume their differences, work together for the betterment, not only of America, but all people in the world, to try to get good drugs made at reasonable prices. And I'm sorry for you not highlighting that tonight.
Yeah. All right, Eric, thank you for that. Let me ask you one question, and then we'll all have comments on your Bobby Kennedy remark. I'm sorry about the passing of your brother-in-law. From him or from others, do you have a theory about what happened to Boeing? Was it bad management? What caused the company to go off the rails?
It's when Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm old and addlepated, so you know, what, 20 some 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And very surprisingly to me, because Boeing's management was pretty reasonable and decent, for some internecine political machinations, McDonnell Douglas management became ascendant, and they were not good management, and they managed for the numbers instead of the quality of the product. And that caused the quality of the product to decline precipitously.
Interesting. Well, it's a great American company. One of the most awesome things I've ever saw. I went out there once with Al Gore, and we toured the field where all the new planes getting ready to be picked up by the customers were, and they had logos from every region of the world and just beautiful products. And I spent time with some of the workers, and they were amongst the most proud of their work of any workers I've ever met in America. This was back in the 90s.
And that's changed.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Eric, regarding Bobby Kennedy, first of all, I mean, when the president speaks, it takes a lot for us to spend time some of this. But I will say this about Bobby Kennedy, and I've said a version of this before. I think he has the potential to go down in history as the most powerful voice standing up to corporate interests of anyone in the history of the country. I really do think he has that potential because of the platform he's been given and because of the clarity he has. His mind is not clear about everything. I just read in the New York Post, he and his family went swimming in the Rock Creek in Washington this weekend, which no one in my life I've ever heard of doing. It's a completely polluted river. So he's not clear thinking about necessarily everything, but his clarity about the power that corporate interests have over our food, our air, our water, and our pharmaceuticals. It's incredible the clarity he has. And I disagree with you when he's about his being a bad speaker. I think when he's focused, I think he's an incredible speaker, incredibly powerful speaker.
He has that physical disability.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. In that respect, yes, sir. In that respect.
And so he can't project.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. But he's figured out how to talk about this stuff.
He is his power is that he's genuine.
Yeah.
He's sincere and genuine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he's got clarity about the dynamics. He understands where their power comes from, and he understands how to control it. Ian, thoughts on Bobby Kennedy?
It's more broadly and
just Eric's point that he's I'm paraphrasing or whatever, but he's become a singular voice that needs to be listened to regarding issues like regulation of pharmaceuticals prices.
Yeah, I'll leave, like, I'm not really too familiar with Bobby and his policy. I do know that, yes, he is a super authentic speaker that connects with folks on a deep level. And I think that's kind of the appeal of the Trump administration more broadly. So agree there. As far as the policy goes, I'll leave that up to the experts, but I do agree that.
Matt.
Yeah, look, I mean, he has been effective in pushing his agenda, very much so. And I think, look, I don't think he was going to last, 2 weeks, 8 weeks. Do I think he's going to last all 4 years? I would be surprised. I would put his over under 2 years, maybe, maybe after the midterms, I would see where we are. But that being said, he is someone who, unlike a lot of the current cabinet officials, he has a persona before the cabinet. People know who he is, knew of him, and that obviously helps elevate him to a status that is above a normal HHS secretary.
Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, Jay Bhattacharya is very self-effacing, in the background and a little bit quiet, but as far as being powerfully effective in his realm, he is off the charts, over the top, fantastic.
Yeah, and like Bobby Kennedy, the people who know his work and appreciate his work are really rabid fans in a good way. Just feel like you do, that the guy is just, we're very lucky to have him in the job he's in. Not everybody feels that way, but his fans are very, very, very emotional about it. Eric, very grateful to you for coming on. We hope you'll come back regularly.
Thank you.
How'd you start watching Two-Way? Any idea?
I'm a political junkie, and somehow I stumbled on you maybe last July or August before the election.
Oh, so you were one of the people who got to know what the outcome was going to be. Thank you, sir. Grateful to have you part of Two-Way. All right. Let's bring in Chris. Chris, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are after you unmute what's on your mind this evening. There you go.
Hey, Chris, Mark, glad to be back. Calling you from Davidson, North Carolina. And my question for you all is about the big, beautiful bill and the prescription EO today. It seemed to me that Trump was alluding to finding a way to combine those two things and put Democrats on the page and recruit more votes for the big, beautiful bill. Maybe I misunderstood him. Is that possible? Is it a strategy? Would it make sense? What are your thoughts on ways to get Democrats engaged in the big, beautiful bill in a meaningful way?
All right. The chances of that are de minimis, but let's let Mr. Gorman take your crack at it first.
Yeah, I don't think it's really an option. And I'll be honest, and I don't think it's for lack of trying. It's just when you have a bill that big, it gives Democrats like Jared Golden, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, the people who could ostensibly be attracted to voting for that, instead of having one reason to not vote for, I'm for or against this or not, they could pick out 10 things, right? And they could say, well, I like this part of the bill, but I didn't like that it doesn't raise taxes on people. Or I didn't like that part, but it gives them an out. I think it's very, very unlikely. And in a way, it would be recipe for a primary if you were voting for that, signature Trump law of his, second term.
Yeah. And I'll just say, I'll give Ian more time because there's policy here, and Ian generally likes to say he's not a policy guy. So I'll say this, Chris. So there'd be at least 3 reasons for a Democrat to vote against this bill. One is Trump derangement syndrome. Okay. One is the politics, as Matt said, you might lose a primary. And one is principal disagreements with what's in there. But in the age in which we're in, you're not going to pass a bill with anything but token bipartisan support if you start on the far side and then think, well, we'll move towards the middle with our moderates. You got to have to start with conversations with the other side. And as I said at the beginning of the program, that's just not where we are right now. Matt said, not for want of trying. I would respectfully disagree. They had no interest in getting Democratic support. And I was critical of them both on the substance and the politics. When the bill was first being formulated early on, they said, well, no Democrats are going to vote for this bill. We don't expect it. I think they should have said, we'd like Democrats to vote for it. And here are things that the Democrats would like. Sure, they're not going to get half a loaf or 3/4 of a loaf or maybe even 25% of a loaf, but we won the election and they should consider supporting it. But they didn't say anything like that. So it's not in the cards. And reconciliation has become, saw it in the Biden administration, the primary way for a president in polarized times to, without 60 votes in the Senate, to just say, this is it. This is our legislative focus. We're going to load as much as the parliamentarian and the Senate will let us have in here, and we're going to pass it, and we're not even going to think about votes from the other side. That's what Biden did, and that's what this president's doing. Ian.
Yeah, I think I'll go with 2 points. One, connecting the kind of broader cuts, tax cuts, program cuts bill to the executive order or broader bill from Congress to kind of further the goals of the executive order on lowering prescription drug costs. The conflation of the two does give you this kind of tacked on extra that Democrats might not agree with, as well as a lot of the voters, right? There is no appetite amongst voters for sweeping cuts to Medicaid if you cannot prove that those cuts are extremely precise, which voters do not believe right now, including cuts to Medicare, to SNAP, aka food stamps, et cetera. So those are going to be not only just big concerns politically giving Trump a win, right? But also just fundamental policy concerns from voters that we're hearing all the time when it comes to like focus groups, et cetera. I think that, like I said at the top, the prescription drug costs kind of executive order and that language is a big win for him. and to tie it up into kind of other legislative priorities without, like Mark said, going to moderates and getting a bill that folks can actually agree on. I think that'll be tough.
All right, hold on. I'm asking ChatGPT a question. Chris Jones, stay right there. Chris Taylor, come in. Couldn't help but notice two Chris's. All right. Which is the more popular family name in America here? Jones or Taylor? What do you guys think? Jones or Taylor? And by what ratio?
Jones.
Jones. What do you think? What do you think it is as a ratio? Hold on, Chris Taylor, I'm unmuting you. What do you guys think it is according to ChatGPT? So Jones more popular.
1.5 to 1.
1.5 to 1, 60-40. Anybody else want to guess? Matt, Ian?
Oh God, I'll say Jones too. I don't know the ratio though.
All right.
I'm
Jones,
going Taylor by a tight margin. Am I wrong?
you're wrong.
Okay.
Jones 2 to 1.
2 to 1.
I didn't
Damn.
do
Oh,
Smith,
dang. Sorry.
but I'll tell you this. Gorman would be in 4th place, except for Halperin. Halperin is in 5th place. All right, Chris Jones, always love having you on. Thank you for coming back.
Thanks, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present you in the number 2 slot, Mr. Chris Taylor. Mr. Taylor, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know the beautiful state you live in and what's on your mind.
I'm up in northern Idaho, and I'm just observing a theme that came from this morning into this afternoon, which is killing the goose that laid the golden egg. I just thought it was interesting that came from Rahm Emanuel. My recollection was when they were trying to get out of the economic difficulties under Obama, I had a political cartoon in my mind that I wanted to create, which was essentially grabbing the goose by the neck, trying to shove a bunch of cash down its throat, but they had it grabbed so tight that and the tightness was the regulations. So they were stifling the economy with the regulations, but they were trying to punch a bunch of cash down to get some more golden eggs. But so I just appreciate the theme going from one to the next.
Yeah, I like that. And of course, as I said this morning, Rahm said Trump is literally killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, which is not true. Whatever else you think figuratively. Chris, except for sharing your storyboard with us, anything else you wanted to say?
No, I mean, at some point, Isaiah's got some updates that'll be fun to announce, but nothing yet.
Isaiah is Chris's ingenious and talented son, which we always like to get updates. I will say, if I have a minute, I'll go on ChatGPT and create that cartoon because I love doing that. It's very good at that, and I like to change the colors. Let's talk about not that Chris asked this, but he brought up Rahm Emanuel. Ian, what Democrat who might run for president in 2028 is doing stuff now that you find interesting and maybe effective, and why?
A lot of layers. One is the assumption that I see a Democrat that might run in 2028 that's doing something interesting. I think
you could say none if that's the answer.
I think that there is at Navigator, one as an institution, Navigator, and myself, we've been talking a lot about authenticity and how that, and like representation, even from Democrats, feels like it's missing. Like there's not this prioritization of the meme or of like broader priorities that might not be the middle class, or working people who don't necessarily qualify for other benefits. And I think a lot of folks are really going out there and trying to nail that authenticity. Pete Buttigieg was on like Flagrant 2. You got J.B. Pritzker, who's really kind of going on the offensive against who feels like Democrats are that aren't representing their folks well. Do I see either one of them as like this kind of knock it out the park kind of hit candidate for 2028?
How about knock it out of the park? Just somebody who's doing one thing that seems effective.
Yeah, I would say if there's the most recent example, I would point to Pete going to Flagrant 2 and just kind of making this stuff normal for folks.
Yeah, that's a good example. Matt, you see any Democrat doing anything that you'd say that's a good idea?
I mean, Rahm's interesting because I never would have guessed that he would be somebody who'd be playing this game, and he's doing your stuff. He's talking to Jamar and other, in that, like, he's not going and doing a bunch of stuff the other guys are doing. I think a lot of the tactics that like Cory Booker and Chris Murphy are just so damn boring. Let's go do a podcast. Let's go from the well of the Senate. Let's it's like, guys, like, this is not doing it. But I will say this, like, I feel like it's just an over obsession on tactics,
Yeah.
and less about what's the actual strategy you guys are doing. Like, right? Like,
Right.
I think at least AOC, I feel like Bernie have a strategy.
Yeah.
It's not just trying to find a podcast, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Chris Taylor, one name, not who would be the best president, not who's the most likely to win the nomination. Who's the Democrat most likely to get elected president in 2028?
I mean, ironically, I think somebody like AOC who actually has traction within their party that could get through the primaries.
Who would have the Republican nominee have to be for you to vote for AOC in the general?
I voted for my mom and grandmother the first time Trump ran.
Yeah.
I could not go that. I'm further conservative than Trump. I thought Trump was a liberal.
What if it was Marjorie Taylor Greene versus AOC? Who would you vote for?
No, I don't like nasty politics. I don't like the dirty side of things.
Yeah. All right. So you'd sit that one
I
out.
will say I'm astonished that every time you have a Democrat on and you basically try to ask them, pin them down, like, what's your message? That there is no message coming out. That's just shocking. It's astonishing to me.
Well, tomorrow on Next Up on the Megyn Kelly Network on my video podcast, I have Michael Bennett on, and let's see what he says, because I'll be asking him about the message, and he's a very smart guy, and he's leaving the Senate to run for governor. So we'll see what he says. Chris, welcome. Thank you for coming. Always happy to have you here. All right, gentlemen, as we conclude, I just want to ask you, of all the deals the president's got going on, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, the one that may be the highest stakes is Ukraine. And he said today that if Putin and Zelensky both want to go to Turkey on Thursday for peace talks, he'll divert his trip and he'll go join them if they'd like him there. And Zelensky immediately said that'd be great. Ian, what do you think the chances of that are, that the three gentlemen in 3 days are in Turkey?
That they go to Turkey? I think Putin might play hard to get. We'll see. But I'll put at 60% if I was
60%
doing the stakes.
Matt?
I think it's going to be a little bit more unlikely. I feel like Putin is in the time where he's going to be a little bit more standoffish right now, especially if Zelensky and Trump really want him to go. He's going to try.
I tend to agree with you in my head, but in my gut, it feels like maybe Putin just wants to show up because he wants to be on the world stage. And if Trump will go too, it's kind of an opportunity to, act like he's a leader of a real country, or not, as John McCain called it, what do you call it? Something with a gas station. I forget what he called it. A dictatorship with a gas station. I can't remember. All right, gentlemen, Ian and Matt, so grateful to you for spending the hour with us. Love having you both on. Hope you'll come back. And if you guys end up going out for drinks sometime this spring or summer, please let me know.
Will do.
Nice to meet you, Matt.
Thank you both. All right, tell you about a few things. Of course, this program will be on in 23 hours tomorrow night. And the morning meeting will be on in less than that. 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, the morning meeting with Sean, Dan, and I, and we'll have the latest on the president's trip. Also tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern time for a live episode. If you want to join live on the Moynihan Report, Michael will be interviewing a guy who Michael probably doesn't know is a friend of mine, author, columnist, and Max Webb Emeritus Rabbi at Sinai Temple. He'll kill me for saying this, but one of the most famous things about my friend David Wolpe is he was Monica Lewinsky's rabbi in L.A. But that's not the only. It's not what you should focus on. But if I'm trying to just attract some of you for purely superficial reasons, in all seriousness, David is one of the most thoughtful people I know. He got a huge heart and a huge brain, and he understands everything about human nature and America and faith. He's just an extraordinary guy, really one of the most incredible people I've met. So David joins Michael at 3:30 Eastern time if you want to be part of the live broadcast, and it will premiere on YouTube at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Michael Moynihan with my friend Rabbi David Wolpe. So please watch that. And I'll see you at 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow on the morning meeting. And then later in the day, you can watch or listen to Next Up with my guest, Michael Bennett, and others, which will be touted soon. Thank you for watching. Thanks everybody who asked questions. Don't forget, you can read the People's Poll on my Substack now or on my Twitter feed with all the great questions. And we're grateful to those of you who submitted questions. Have a good evening. Thank you.